Welcome back to this fourth lecture on collective intelligence. Today we're going to look at knowledge. In order to understand collective intelligence and knowledge integration, we need to spend some time looking deeper into what knowledge really is, because that is the essence of what we want to achieve in a microsystem situation. We want to integrate knowledge. And to understand that process, we need to understand knowledge. And it may seem surprising, but as of today, no one has been able to give a generally accepted definition of knowledge. And it has been tried for more than 2,000 years. So how can this be so difficult? To understand that, we just need to look at these two glasses of water. One simple idea of knowledge is that we can say this glass is filled to 50% with water. That may seem like a simple fact, but if you look into the details of scientific philosophy, not even that could be said. But let's not go into those problems. Let's accept the statement. Now, one idea of what knowledge is this, the rational or cognitivistic perspective. Knowledge is like objects. It's something we can state, we can store, we can retrieve, and we can use in other situations. But it's basically the same thing. But now answer this question. Is the glass half full or half empty? It's impossible to say, right? It would depend on our perspective and probably even on our personality. This is the issue of knowledge that the Constructivists introduce. That knowledge is never something neutral. As we use knowledge, it is always in a setting or a context or from a perspective. This may seem like we're just complicating things, but as we shall see in this lecture, it will have a major impact of our understanding of microsystems and how you create efficient microsystem processes. And it's the latter perspective we will have to understand, the interpretive or constructivistic perspective, because it's essentially that we're working with in microsystems. So, here's one way to explain this. Look at this individual who is looking at a motorbike. According to the first perspective of knowledge, this is rather uncomplicated. The person sees a motorcycle. But the constructivist perspective basically says that every person is trapped in his or her shell of truths, or that is accumulated knowledge and experiences which we use to interpret new things that we experience. And it's with this frame of references that makes us able to understand basically anything. Now, so how can you see this motorcycle? Well, I use it because I have a personal experience of motorcycles, which is very positive. Because when I was 16, I managed to, get a driver's license for a motorcycle, and I started I bought one, and I was suddenly very quickly felt very adult, and I could felt some kind of freedom. I could do things. I was becoming a bit more popular, and so well. Basically, it was my experience was very positive. Was so positive, so I continued driving a motorcycle. But then, when I had my first child, I, as a 30-year-old or 29 years old, I was thinking, but it is very irresponsible to be driving a motorcycle when you have children. So I sold my bike. I rented some a few times, but I sold it and I didn't have any of my own. Then I got my second child, and of course I continued thinking, that's part of my past life. Then suddenly we were having our third child, and it suddenly appeared to be, or it was two kids because we got twins. So suddenly I have 4 children, and then I just went out and bought myself a motorbike because now it was something I needed. That's what it is to me. It's always been something positive. But imagine at the same time my mother, as I'm 16 years old and get my motorcycle. What is it to her? Well, I don't know, but she was nice. She was a nice mother and let me have one. But still, I'm quite sure that there was many evenings of worrying and being scared that something would happen to me and so on. So who has, the correct view of what a motorcycle is? This doesn't just apply for objects, it applies for words as well. I'll give you another example. The word profit. The word profit, in general, I would say at the Stockholm School of Economics is a, positive word. It's a word that sort of explains how markets work, and it's connected to gaining more resources than you spend, and hence you get chances to do new things and so on. So in general, it's something that we have a positive attitude towards. Now, if you go out on Sveavägen, where the Stockholm School of Economics is located, and you just march 300 meters to the right when you exit the entrance, then you're in another building. You can go into another building, which is the headquarters of the Swedish Social Democrats. In this building, the word profit is, I wouldn't say, maybe it's not that negative, but it's definitely nothing that is naturally positive. It's something we want to avoid in the welfare sector, and it's something we need to control and regulate, and it shouldn't be too big in any industry, basically. That's our attitude towards profit. And again, who has the right picture? Well, it's certainly true that a lot of bad things have been done in the name of profit, and it's also true that it's basically the mechanism that makes our economy work as efficient, or, well, at least more efficiently than the alternative. So the point is that you cannot have a neutral perspective of knowledge, because it's always connected to things and means things to different persons. And this shell of truth is something we need to realize we're working from when we're going to exchange knowledge with other people in advanced and complicated cooperative situations. If we understand knowledge from an interpretive perspective, we will understand that any knowledge integration happening between two persons need to address this issue of the shell of truths. That is, the persons first need to align their understandings in order to ensure that they are actually talking about the same thing. This part of knowledge integration is probably the most underestimated and something that is rarely addressed in a structured manner in organization. Here is often where we go wrong. Human beings tend to believe that when they talk, the person they talk to have the same shell of truth. But what do you think would happen if two persons with fundamentally different ideas of the word profit start to talk about a new business idea in the public sector? As you will see later, there is a great risk in starting to talk about details when these fundamental differences haven't been clarified. Okay, so to explain why this matters, why it matters the way we understand things and our shell of truths, I'm going to show you with a simple example how we actually deal with things in reality. And I'm going to show you that the most simple thing in real life is actually rather complicated. And I will use a rather ridiculous example of let's assume it's me, and let's assume I'm working here, I'm recording this lecture, but at the same time suddenly I get the thinking, the thought that tonight I'm going to have dinner, and I'll have so much to do, so I won't have time to go shopping, and therefore, I do have this can of sausages in my cupboard, and that's going to be my dinner. So problem solved, and I don't think more about that. But later tonight, in the evening, let's say about 8 o'clock, I'm thinking now it's time for dinner, and I find the can, but I can't find a can opener. Well, this seems like, quite a ridiculous problem, I hope, to most of you. But still, let's look into the details of this and see that it's actually rather complicated. And the fact is that when an individual solves problems like this in an intelligent way, we wouldn't even see that happening, because if we try to do research on this, and when we put up microphones and cameras in the kitchen and so on, we would just see probably this person freezing for a millisecond or so while something happens in the brain that needs to address a number of things. But suppose we had to do this in a group what is it we have to do? Well, the thing is that if we break down this, we have to set the problem first in order to solve it. And how could we set this problem? Well, you can say it could be either let's call that a technical problem setting, which is, could be just, so how do you open a can without having a can opener? Is that even possible? Well, of course it is. There are actually numerous ways of doing that. Most of them wouldn't be very intelligent, but still there would be possible solutions. You could run the car over the can, or you could hack it up with a knife, or you could go to your neighbor and ask if you could borrow a can opener, or you could go to the store and buy one, and so on. But the thing that combines all these solutions is the fact that we are focusing on the problem in this situation, which is how do we get the can open? So that's the problem setting we're working with. But in a millisecond, we could just redefine the problem setting into cooking dinner, because ultimately wasn't that what it was about? It was me thinking about, what am I going to eat tonight? And if I have the cooking dinner problem, isn't really there and nothing else in my kitchen that I could eat? Do I have something in the freezer? Do I have, bread and butter or whatever that could serve as a dinner? Or in another millisecond, we could sort of redefine problem again into having dinner. Why do I need to cook? Isn't the problem to stop me from being hungry? So I could go to McDonald's, or I could go to, order an online pizza or whatever. But again, you can actually continue this process, because I said it was, 8 o'clock this evening. And at 8 o'clock this evening, to me, what is really the problem? I won't have to eat for probably, up to 2 weeks, as long as I get some water. So it's not, really a crisis here or anything, which means I can actually set the problem totally different. I can start thinking about, why am I alone in my house having to eat a can of sausage at 8 o'clock? Maybe I have a social issue. I should have some friends and meet them for dinner or whatever. So the thing is that you can't really say what the right problem setting is. It's just that in order to find a problem solution and work with the problem solution, we need to fix the problem setting. Otherwise, we have sort of too many options. And this is not a problem for normally for human beings to do this individually, because we don't even think about it. We sort of flip back and forth between problem solving and problem setting until we find something that is what Herbert Simon once defined as satisficing. We're not optimizing, we're not being rational, we're trying to find satisfactory solutions, giving a rather sort of quick and sometimes very sloppy thinking in this way. But suppose you are your issue is here to integrate different people's knowledge in this situation. You want to solve this problem collectively, and then you have one person going, oh right, I could hack this can open with my knife, and another person is sort of immediately starts thinking, oh yeah, why don't we go to McDonald's? I'm really got an itch for a McFeast. Now, how do you integrate this person's knowledge? Well, to get them to work on the same problem and to sort of use their knowledge in combination to solve a problem, they would first have to agree upon the problem setting. Otherwise, this situation could actually, instead of solving problems, it could create conflict, right? Suppose they start arguing about what they should be doing, and it's basically because they're taking totally different perspectives. So, to summarize, this is very much the essence about what collective intelligence is really about. I took this rather simple case of a can and of sausages and dinner just as an example of the fact that everything that we do is within this kind of hierarchy of means and ends. Something that Herbert Simon introduced in his theory of bounded rationality. Everything can be ordered in these hierarchies, and we can just change the perspective on our problems by moving up and downwards in these hierarchies. And this is the reason, remember this, that this is the reason why high-performing teams, when we study how they discuss things, they spend 2,300% more time on inquiring than the low-performing teams. So the explanation here is that the fact that you are inquiring, you sort of investigate the different hierarchies and problem settings that are relevant for the situation, which means you will get a more advanced representation, which means that you will have more chances of finding intelligent solutions. So to summarize, this theory on collective intelligence is based on an interpretive knowledge perspective. The interpretive knowledge perspective views knowledge as being social and situational. Social in terms of being under influence of social relations all the time, situational in terms of being formulated under specific interpretations of the situation, and that there are always other possible interpretations or problem settings in this case. Problem setting is therefore a central process that precedes explicit or implicit problem solving. If it is not open and clear in collective situations, there is a risk that the participants will discuss details under different problem settings, resulting in, of course, low collective intelligence. They aren't even realizing that they have a totally different perspective on the situation than the other person they're talking with, which means that what is said by the other person doesn't really make sense. So this is what we're going to look closer at in the following lectures. Thank you.